Did we plan this room perfectly or what? Wow. The exact right size for this month, right?
Nailed it.
Welcome to the all-church meeting. You'll see the agenda in just a moment, but first we're going to have an opening prayer. I'm going to read a portion of the Canadian Creed. So let's be in the spirit of prayer. We trust in God, and we are called to be the church, to celebrate God's presence, to live with respect in creation, to love and serve others, to seek justice and resist evil, to proclaim Jesus crucified and risen, our judge and our hope in life and death, in life beyond death. God is with us. We are not alone. Thanks be to God. So again, welcome. Here's our agenda. You already heard the opening prayer. We're going to do a little welcome. We're going to talk about some administrative items. We'll have a quick update from the worship committee, a financial update, and a simple governance update. That's the heart of the meeting. There are no action items tonight. This is an informational meeting. So it's our opportunity to share with you what's going on in the life of the church. Administrative items. First, we will remember that back in January, Haley was talking about sponsoring coffee hour. Remember that? And they did that for the whole month of January. Then we had outreach in February, worship in March. It's going to do March. We don't have anybody for April and May yet. And I know we have at least 3 important committees that could step up to take those slots. Could be SPR, could be trustees, could be finance, could be another committee.
Men's group.
Could be men's group. Do I hear any volunteers for April?
I think SPR will take May.
Excellent.
Are you going to be gone all week?
Yes.
And if you're considering April, you won't have to do Easter because that will be handled separately, so you'll be having less than April. So if that makes a difference.
Okay, we will leave April open for the moment. If you're a church council member, you know that Ann did send out all the reports and so on and so forth. So we thank Ann for that continued effort. I think the only other item under administrative is going to be Clay's update on Big Church.
Yes. We have a big church.
Thank you.
Just a very quick update on life in the United Methodist Church, which is convoluted as always. There's really no significant change that has happened, except that the annual conference will meet in a special session in May for the purpose of considering churches, congregations that are applying to disaffiliate from our Oregon Idaho Conference. It's not a ton of churches, it's a small handful, I think, and I don't think there's any that are guaranteed to apply. I'm sure that there's some who will, but I think they're still in their process of discerning and voting at the congregational level. But we're anticipating that some will say, yes, we want to disaffiliate, and they'll come and have to be approved by the annual conference. Our friend Dana is actually on the conference board of trustees. There's a conference trustees that acts in some ways similarly to our board of trustees. And that's the group that is primarily leading negotiations with these congregations about how will the exit happen, and what it comes down to is money, as so many things do. Making sure that the congregations who are leaving are not leaving indebtedness or money owed to the conference or money owed for pastoral retirement funds, those kind of things. So that's the conversations that are happening with those churches. At the larger United Methodist level, there are some churches, you've probably seen the news headlines that there's some churches who have left. But in the global scheme of things, currently it's less than 4% of congregations who've either disaffiliated or expressed their interest in disaffiliating. So there will probably be some more over the next year or so. This is not going to be an ongoing process where it just keeps going and going and going and going. There's kind of a window in which we're operating in this mode of allowing churches to disaffiliate with some grace and accountability. And then after that, churches can always disaffiliate, but it's much more complicated after that window closes. So that's where we are. And then I think I've shared this with you before, but just in case you didn't know, you might remember we meet every 4 years as the general conference. So representative delegates from every conference are part of that general conference. That's a global gathering that happens every 4 years. That's the only group that can make decisions about the Book of Discipline. The 2020 general conference was canceled because 2020. And it was delayed to 2021, and then it was delayed to 2022, and now it's delayed to 2024. Now, if you can do math, and you know that we were supposed to have one in 2020, and it's now scheduled for 2024, you might go, oh, that's just the normal pattern. And it is, except we skipped 2020. But, there was a big conversation, this meeting that we're having in 2024, is it the delayed 2020 conference, or is it the new 2024 conference? It went to the Methodist Judicial Council, which is our Supreme Court. They ruled that it is the delayed 2020 General Conference. The reason that became a point of discussion was about who were the delegates to that 2024 conference. The people who were elected to serve in 2020 and never had that opportunity, or a new slate of delegates who would be elected, and that was the decision of the Judicial Council. That doesn't have a direct impact on us, obviously, but if you hear conversations about General Conference, that's what you need to know. So that's kind of where things are at the global and national United Methodist level. As our denomination, I'm happy to answer questions if there are any after or something real short.
I just have one question. Have the 2024 delegates been elected?
No.
And they never will be?
Probably not. My understanding would be that they will not convene a 2024 General Conference. But this being United Methodist Church, who knows? I don't think anybody's anticipating, because it wouldn't have any real decisions to make that have an impact. Because the 2020 conference will make those decisions, and you wouldn't have us immediately have another conference that would make a separate set of decisions. That's what I think. Yeah, my guess is that they will simply just void the 2024 General Conference and get back to the pattern in 2028. Yeah, we won't delay the 2024 to 2028. Although maybe we would. Yeah, if you want to know more about any of that, I'll be happy to answer questions afterwards. We don't know the names of the churches in our conference who've chosen or are in the process of potentially disaffiliating. Those aren't public yet. I know the name of one church because it's in the gossip stuff on there. So there's one significantly sized church that I know about. There are others that are mostly smaller churches across our conference. There you go. Thanks for that. And if you want to know more, I'll always talk more about United Methodist nerdery with you.
I wanted to mention also, before I turn it over to worship, we are recording this session, and it will be put up on the website. So we've gone back and forth. Is it going to be streamed? Is it not going to be streamed? And so forth. So for those who were not able to come or chose not to come tonight, they'll always be able to see this information on the website to be able to keep up with what's going on. Okay? I'll turn it over to the worship committee.
Yes, things are normal. Well, as usual, during Lent, we're having the soup suppers, my best thought, and place Lenten study. However, it didn't go quite as planned this last week, but you saw in the quick news that came out today what the potential plan is, hopefully, for the rest of the Lenten soup suppers and my best thoughts.
And just a thought, I know a lot of people missed Ash Wednesday because it's kind of a time to center, and it's the beginning of Lent. And since we missed that, in this room on this Sunday at 5 p.m., there will be the sanctuary That's gonna be happening the first Sunday of every month. And it's in here, and the lights are dim, and the candles. I can't recommend it enough. If you want just a quiet, kind of reflective service, so you want to consider it. Then, we've got Holy Week coming up, which is, on Sunday. And that we will have the traditional two services, one at 9, the other one at 10:30. Both the Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday services will be at 7 p.m. in the evening in the sanctuary. And Easter services, we're excited to say we're going to have a sunrise service at Firth Hills Park. So we'll have 3 services, the sunrise, the 9, and then the 10:30 at the regular time. And we will also be doing a prayer, what do we call it?
Instead of the usual prayer vigil, we're going to have a prayer devotional packet. Clay is going to make for us of some sort.
Is that this year?
So each day in Holy Week, you'll have a different opportunity to be prayerful in a different way. And the sanctuary will also be open during office hours. So if that was something that you love to do, maybe the vigil was to come and pray in the sanctuary, you'll still be able to do that.
Question,
Yes.
will the sunrise be out front or out back, or you don't?
Foothills Park. Foothills Park.
Oh, yeah, oh, that's
And
awesome.
there is a covered area. The city won't let us reserve it because it's too early. They don't have personnel that will be there, but the bathrooms are open. And so if it's raining, you can still have a very nice sunrise service.
The covered area has a fireplace, so if it's cool, we can do it nice and cozy.
Do you know what's going on?
Sunrise.
Sunrise is at 6:35, so probably 6:15. And any of the details about any of this stuff, it will always be in the quick news and during the, Sunday announcements. But we just kind of wanted to do it overall with all the wonderful things that are happening.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions?
We're ready to move to finance.
Our financial situation is really positive right now.
So nobody spend anything.
Our pledges are up 5% from last year. $356,700, of which 8 people have already paid their full year's pledge. So we received, hopefully non-pledging members will add another 55,000 to the budget.
Supports us.
457 is our income, total income. Expense is 507, which leaves a $50,000 gap, which has to be filled from the request.
Maybe we'll add that, the same thing happened to us in 2022. So, again, we just have to drill into the request, the balance the budget. Don't want to, but got it.
And we do have cash in the request to cover that. Pastor and staff is $280,000. Facility is $140,000. And the rest is $87,000. For a total of $507,000. This is my graph with all of the actual numbers in it, which add up to 507,215. You can see where that our pledges are almost 3/4 of the budget. And requested income And rental income is up for this year. You can see that our people are most of our benefits, most of our costs, with a portion that's being 61,000. And outreach is pretty small, but outreach also gets part of the money from the bequest. Utilities are basically the only thing that we can control.
You're not using them, you know they're not.
Can I just make an SPR comment? I hope everybody feels good about your pledges are keeping our wonderful staff alive and well.
Yeah.
And, you know, it should never be a day where you go, why do we have all these people? If you want to know why we have all these people, come in here on any given day and watch the buzz that takes place in this house. It takes a lot of people on deck to make this place work.
I think this is the last finance slide.
No, there's more. Oh, there's more. You've been off the hook yet.
The bequest to the 2023 plan is to take $36,000 for outreach, technology, and facilities. That includes some transfers from programs and associate pastor, which are delayed out.
And just to comment, the reason that I asked her is because programs actually, there's 15,000 in the checking account. It's already in. So what we're talking about is $36,000 new money.
New money
If we
coming
need it.
out that has to come out of the bequest from the cash that's in there.
And you can see we've become progressively more stingy over the years when you look at, you know, 309,000 in 2020, but all that money went to some very good things, like making sure we have a fire alarm throughout our fire facilities,
Yes.
roofing. And last year in 2022, you know, it was a pretty healthy amount here, but that was because we still have repairs that have to happen, like our HVAC system.
Well, that,
Yes.
hopefully we're not gonna need to repair it anymore, but they're coming out tomorrow. And we do have the roof on the CAC is gonna need to be replaced, hopefully by next year.
And we don't really have that in there for 2023, probably be 2024, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We just have to see.
And I have a question. Outreach usually receives 26,500.
Yeah, but
From
you
the
still have,
bequest?
but the thing is, you have leftover money from last year that didn't get spent. We need to go offline and talk to you about when.
That's fine, but just so I know, you wanna spend more than we have.
No, in fact, I asked Lori for a report on what you have in your account.
Okay,
I need to have that report.
okay, thank you.
So are there any questions on that?
I have a question. So if the 55,000 doesn't come in from outside giving, does that additional come out of the bequest on top of the 50,000 that's coming out of the bequest? So is it 50,000 plus an additional 50,
It could.
55?
It could.
No. Okay.
A budget is just an estimate. And so we don't know what's actually gonna happen.
Right, but I'm just
But it
trying to
looks
see.
like right now that we're ahead of the budget.
So we thought about, as a church, doing any kind of fundraiser to help offset some of that shortfall? You know, like we've done different things through the years, the music programs, we're gonna do a program in the spring, maybe we should, have the money we charge for a ticket, have it go.
Our cash flow is looking really good right now. Because so many people have prepaid their pledges. And because the pledges amount is so high.
I'm sorry, on this 36,000, is that money that was already earmarked out of the request?
We had like a 10-year plan,
Yeah, is this?
and yeah, but we tempered this now, because originally this, in the plan, it was looking more like about 90,000.
Yeah, so we've delayed some of the expenses out to future years. For example, the associate pastor is not gonna be here this year.
Well, I would say if there's an interest in doing any kind of fundraising, we ought to do it. Because there are facility things that we'd like to do that are just being put off because of the cost. And eventually they're gonna have to be done.
I think so many other churches are struggling financially, like we would be if we didn't have the bequest money, so I think we always need to kind of keep that in mind, that we're in a pretty good spot with having that money, and it's been managed very well. But how fortunate we are that we have that, because a lot of other churches don't, and they're looking at how do we fundraise, what do we do to supplement?
Yeah, so two
So
comments.
we're really fortunate.
Maybe two comments though on the whole fundraising idea. Number one of the things we focused on was rent. And now we have an additional preschool for that years, which really helps a lot. And Stacy is constantly renting the facility to other groups, kind of thing, so that's a really good thing.
And we're getting some income out of the parking lot.
Yeah, it's more rent. It's rent. Yeah.
But we have to be careful what we do there, so that we don't lose our nonprofit status. It has to be something that can relate back to a church activity.
We're only renting nonprofits, so that shouldn't be an issue at all.
Yeah,
The other
that's to be careful we're doing.
The other comment.
Everyone who comes through declares their nonprofit status.
Yep,
You have to go around.
yep. Oh, yeah.
They have to prove it.
And the comment on other fundraising, remember, if we do fundraising amongst our people, it's still like making a pledge. We're asking for money out of the same pockets. The only way you're really getting any real juice out of fundraising is to get it from the general public,
Right,
somebody from outside.
which, there are things you can do that.
But that's the thought process we have to have.
Well, and isn't that 55,000 is based on historical giving of non-pledged giving, right?
That was based on last year's non-pledged giving.
Yeah, so it's typically is how much comes in.
It's just a sign sheet.
I suppose.
Is there another one?
Yeah. There's another. This is the outside for this last.
Plan projects, 50,000 operating budget gap. 36,000, so that anticipated bequest spend down in 2023 would be 86,500.
You might recall last year in all church meeting, we said we were going to spend this bequest down within 10 years at the pace we were going. This is great. If you do the math, this thing will last 30 years. So again, we're in much better shape than we have been. The wild card's going to be if we got to do the roof, that's going to be a big bubble. That's going to take a piece out of this. But overall, we're in such better shape than we were. And that's all thanks to our church family giving. And I think
Yes, I
that's,
think we're really positive on the pledges and the non-pledged giving. And the rental.
Anything else for finance? Linda, thank you. It's a lot of work for the finance committee to go through this process, pull the budget together, and go through all those numbers, project out how we're gonna manage our way through the year, and then manage it throughout the year. So the committee's done a great job in doing this, and I think much earlier than we we had in the past years, and we're only at the beginning of March, we already got the budget approved, so that's awesome. So thank you. Simple governance. So if you remember, we started talking with you about this last October. And,
Can I just, I'm sorry, this is very personal, but I think, and it's my husband, but I think John deserves a lot of credit for this, because he is the one who spent hours and hours and hours really trying to pull this together and putting the slideshow and stuff together, so I just want to be fair.
Highly biased opinion.
I wanted to say a minute ago, what a nice room we're in, but it's thanks to you,
John is the PowerPoint master.
Just a minimal labor.
Great.
It works, yes.
So we started talking about this with you last October, although this has been a much longer process. But reminding what simple governance is.
Wow, that was fancy, yeah.
It's a structure designed to ensure there's focus on the mission of the church. And what does that mean? Well, it's focusing on the why we do things rather than focusing on the how we do things. So the structure basically is that there will be a board which focuses on policy and vision. There will be elected leaders, in particular, to make sure that we manage three critical functions for the church: finance, SPR, and trustees. This is actually required by the Book of Discipline, but the model focuses in particular on these, and these will be elected positions to make sure we manage these well. And lastly, everything else is done by a combination of our staff and ministries. So this is how we got here. That CLDT thing is the Church Leadership Development Team, which back in 2016, Mark was one of the guys, Jeannie, Dennis Sizemore, Connery Woody, and Dan Wilson-Fay. Began as a team working on this, and they were going through kind of the Ross sessions, if you will. Stephen Ross was the guy who did a number of these sessions and ultimately wrote the book called Simple Governance. That was leading us toward this structure. However, Dan then left us as pastor. We had Rolf as our interim. Michelle came, 2020 happened. But the church council took this on seriously in 2020 and spent basically a year assigning the chapters of the book to each other and presenting to ourselves. We interviewed churches, we interviewed Stephen Ross himself, we talked to Tim Overton Harris, and ultimately it ended up in September of this last year where the church council unanimously approved, yes, we should move to this type of structure for our church. So we formed a task team to get this done. So this is relatively new stuff for you. These are things you haven't seen before. So these 6 individuals are the task team that's been working on devising the structure. I'll just point out, Ann and Deb, of course, are our lay leaders. The 2 of them, along with myself, are the ones who did a lot of the interviewing and talking to churches who had done this and so on and so forth. Mark, of course, was on that church development leadership team originally and is the past chair of the church council. Jenny Cook is none of the above. She's here, she's part of this because she brings a fresh look. She didn't go through all the reading of the book and talking to the churches and how do we do this and so forth. So it's a very objective perspective. And of course, she was very instrumental in the re-entry team work that we did. We did a great job with that. And of course, also has two sons in our youth program. So it brings a lot of that type of expertise to the team. And then, of course, Clay, who is our seasoned expert because he brought the Hillsborough Church into the simple governance structure. So that's your task team. What are we doing? First thing we're doing is working on the design of the board model. How does it look? How many people are on it and so forth? We have to talk through what elected positions will we need. We talked about finance, SPR, trustees, and so forth. What supporting structure will be needed underneath to make sure we can get all the things the church needs to get done. What type of terms will we have? Is it a 3-year term? How do you rotate people in and out and so forth? These are all the things that the task team is working to produce. We've had 2 meetings so far. What came out of this last meeting we had was assignments to each of us in pairs so we could work on specifically the finance, SPR, and trustee structures. We have 2 meetings coming up in March, in fact, the next 2 Mondays. Timeline. So we hope to have our tasking work done by the end of April. And at that time, this model and structure will be passed to the nominations group, who will then begin their thinking and identifying individuals who will become those either elected positions or those board members. In May or June, we'll have to have a charge conference to approve the structure formally. Clay's already been in contact with Tim Overton Harris to see what kind of a date we can get for that, hopefully in the May or June timeframe. And if all goes well, we'll have the new board in place on July 1st. So how will you be able to know what's going on and so forth? Well, one is these all church meetings. We're having this one tonight, we had one in October, we'll have another one likely in June to make presentations, to keep you up to date on what we're doing. There will be special namings, so we've already crafted a letter to you that will go out probably sometime next week, summarizing a lot of what we talked about tonight, just to make sure everybody, those who aren't here, those who aren't able to watch it online, et cetera, can keep up to date on what it is that we're doing. There'll be updates from at worship, and then of course there's always the quick news and the spotlight and so forth. So a lot of different ways to communicate to you. That is the overview for simple governance, and we can take some questions, certainly.
Amen.
Jeannie?
So we've never had elected officials in our church, so maybe this is too early to ask that question, how we would elect people?
I'm using that term meaning what nominations would normally do in terms of electing the trustees chair,
So they will
the
be
finance
asked
chair,
by nomination.
asked by nominations
in
to
the past,
serve.
like they were in the past, so it's
Yeah.
not.
Nothing fancier than what you already do.
Not an election, I thought, oh my.
It's not like a vote, yeah, we don't have to cast on ballots or anything.
And what's important here, I didn't count, but for those of you who have the nominations report, each year, of course, at the end of the conference, we put up our nominations report. And if you look through, there's got to be, take a guess, what, 60, 50?
Yeah,
90.
No.
So the nominations group is going through that effort to contact each of you, and, Bob, how many committees are you on? Yeah, John, how many are you on? I know you're on 5.
Well, Mr. M's noticed that was the one page that was an error.
So the point is, the nominations committee has to go through and find all those people who will serve, and we serve for 2 years or 3 years or even longer in some cases. Instead of having to identify all of those people, and all those people therefore attending all of these meetings for each of these committees, there'll be maybe a dozen, or I would guess less than 20 people who nominations will quote unquote elect, who they will talk to and identify that that's a calling that that person has. So, did that answer your question?
Yes. No campaigning with people.
Signs up right there.
We will be campaigning to not be elected.
Yeah.
Don't vote for Jeff.
Clay, what do you want to add?
What do I want to add? I'm happy to answer if there are other questions, but I will say, this is not only is it a structural change, it's a cultural change, and that's the part that takes a little while to sort of seep into. So there's going to be a year or two where this feels like wearing a new pair of shoes that don't quite fit right. The nice thing is that the shoes break in. And so if, our experience in Hillsborough, which is not necessarily going to be the same here, but in terms of what the experience of going through was like, once we put the board in place, it took a while for people to know how it worked, because you can have it on paper, but when you actually then get into the practice of doing it, that's what you have to learn. So it took us a year or two before we were like, oh, okay, this is how we do things. One of the significant differences is that with the ministry teams that you have, instead of having a series of committees, You empower your ministry teams to make decisions, and you give them some guidelines, and they can spend money without asking permission if it's within their purview, right? So the trustees don't have to come back and say, hey, we have these things that we need to buy. Well, is it in your budget? Yeah, okay, don't have to come ask. And same for any of the other ministry teams that have budget money assigned, they don't have to come get permission to spend that money or get approval for the work that they're doing. We just entrust them to do that. Now, we're already doing that to a large degree here. There's not people coming and asking for money at every church council. But that was certainly a pinch point in our experience in Hillsborough, was that they had a more structure where people would come and say, hey, we need to buy XYZ, can we do that? And we said, you can just do that. And they came in the next month and said, we need to buy this can we do that? You can just buy it, you don't have to come ask permission. And it took a year or two before people really trusted that was how it was gonna work. So we could expect that sort of a year sort of transition time to get used to this. So if it feels weird for a while, that's okay. That's really all I can add. I don't need to add anything else unless there are specific questions.
Have the ministry teams been identified, or are they gonna be the same as what we currently have, or?
No, we haven't gotten to that point. I think you can expect that most of the things that exist now will continue to exist. And we're not gonna eliminate anything. What we'll probably see is that some new things will pop up. That new ministry teams will be like, I have an idea, let's try something. And we may find also that some groups that currently function as a committee may break into like two different ministry teams because they're doing they're doing related but different kinds of work. So there may be some shifts that happen that way, but we're not gonna define for people, here's what the ministry team should be. We'll kind of start with what we have and let them evolve organically. I'm gonna get out of the way then.
So we do try to keep these to less than an hour, just to respect everybody's time. And we've done that successfully.
Man, I could have took for a lot longer, because that told me 37 minutes.
The other thing we traditionally do.
15-minute Zoom meeting rule, we try to enforce at work, so you're 13 minutes still is all.
The other thing we do traditionally is we call on someone to give us a closing prayer. Bob.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your church. We thank you for this small portion of your church. We thank you for the opportunity to think about the future and what it might hold for this small portion of your church. Bless our deliberations, bless our hopes, our prayers, our suggestions, whatever may come out in the next 5, 6, 7 months, 1 year, 2 years, may they be for the furtherance of the kingdom of God and for the creation of disciples for the transformation of the world, our fervent hope. Thank you, Lord. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Look at the timing.
Maybe it's getting shorter.
I love it.